Welcome, everybody, to this Friday's live stream here in the Nutmeg Tavern. And I've got a special guest with me today, Dave Taylor, who has a lot of experience reenacting, and he runs an antique store and a coffee house. And, well, I used to run a coffee house, and has done naval reenactment as well as being in the Navy. I'm John Townsend. And I've got a few folks behind the scenes. I don't know if you're going to see them or not, but Aaron is on the console making the technical stuff work. And yes, we had technical difficulties today getting, I don't know, YouTube, the computer, who knows what. And Ryan is in the question seat instead of being behind the bar. So we're going to have to deal with what we deal with. We're just going to go right into the main content because we had very little prep time or the stream wasn't working right. So we're just going to go straight into it. Yes, Ryan?
I will go ahead and say, fill up this chat with questions for Dave on coffee, reenacting, antiquing, any of that kind of stuff because he knows it all.
Yeah, he knows that. He knows it all. So
ask any 2-year-old child; they'll know.
So the last time we had Dave on, we talked about, both during the live stream and afterwards, about this idea of a special coffee blend for the Nutmeg Tavern, specifically designed around nutmeg. Tell us what you worked on, Dave.
Each coffee has a profile, whether it's a Mexican coffee, Guatemalan, African. Each one of these coffees in these areas of South America, Central America, Indonesia, they all have coffee profiles. So you taste these different coffees, you cup them singly, and then you understand their characteristics. And then you decide what you want to have. I went through 2 or 3 different blends before I hit on this one here, which this one I really like. Because I had to keep in mind that nutmeg is going to go into this. So what do you want to do with nutmeg? You want it to be kind of a sweet coffee, and the base of this coffee is a sweeter coffee. And then I wanted a nice smoothness to it, a creamy finish, because you're going to run milk, and a little spiciness to it. Right. So I used a combination of Central American and African coffees to give me that flavor profile. And I will tell you, if you'll talk to a bunch of coffee roasters, or they all get together and they can talk for hours about coffee and not really say anything. And what I mean, because they're not going to divulge any secrets. How did they get this? Yeah. And so I've done that a few times, and I have found out that you can be very forthright. And you can say a lot of things, and everybody's going to kind of understand. If you're talking about African coffees and you're going to talk about Kenyan, you're going to know it's going to like a dry red wine, Or if you're talking about Guatemalans, Central Americans, there's going to be chocolate notes in them, and Indonesians are going to be spicy, and so on and so forth. So, and we'll all agree on those things, but when you get right down to a blend or roasting times, all this, they're not going to tell you nothing. Right.
So, but you were looking for something specifically that's going to work with nutmeg, and I think we're going to go ahead and try this out. Here you go. Here's a cup for you. Ryan apparently has already brewed this
could
up.
Not be like we could not pick a worse time to debut this coffee because YouTube is being all goofy. Like no one's in the stream and no one got notifications. So I don't know. Do we want to try to wait and see if we fill up a little more before we can?
I don't know. That's a little strange.
Yeah. I
don't
know.
Does it tell you if somebody's watching?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So nobody's watching.
Well, I mean, there's a couple people.
Hey, okay. Well, you still you still can't be. You can't say stupid things.
Right.
Whoops.
Yes.
And good thing we didn't.
Good thing there wasn't anything in that.
That's,
So somebody is asking what coffees were available then versus nowadays.
Yeah. Good question.
Well, by that time, the coffee started out essentially in Ethiopia. That was the birthplace of coffee, and from there it went to like Indonesia, India, and into the Arab Peninsula. Then coffee was there was some plants that were given to the French emperor or the French prince, the king of France, and a Captain Clouseau, he was given some of these plants, or a couple of plants, and he took them to the island of Martinique, and they almost died on the way. He used his water rations to keep these alive. So the first coffee that arrived in America, 1600s, I believe, because I didn't bone up on this here just before I fell out. And then the coffees from South America and Central American, that's why a lot of those are called bourbon coffees. And then from there, they went to Hawaii, and actually the last place that actually cultivated coffee for export to in commercial farming was done in Africa. So coffee made a full circle, and Africa was the last place.
So during the 18th century...
But the 18th century was certainly coffees from South America through the islands, and that would have been extremely common then because it was close to get. They probably did not ship coffees from Indonesia, India. I would say that at that time, probably everything was South American, Central American coffees. Yeah. So through the Caribbean.
Yeah, Caribbean. Yep. That'd be a good guess. Like exporting it out of Haiti and places like that. Yeah.
And that's extremely, extremely good coffee. Through the although I've had some very bad coffee and some of the worst coffee I had. It's actually the worst coffee I ever had was a Jamaican Blue Mountain that somebody had brought in. And that's one of the things you have to be careful about, the whole tourist trap kind of thing. You go somewhere and here's this Jamaican Blue Mountain or whatever, and
this turns out to be
yes, we should have cooked the bag
floor sweepings and whatever.
and there is that, but at the same time, some of the very best coffee is from Jamaican Blue Mountain, and so you can, just because it comes from, that's why coffee brokers cup those coffees. They taste them to figure out which farm it comes from, so on and so forth. And there's a whole range of flavors. Hawaii is that way. There's a whole range of flavors. So,
real quick, guys, how's the stream doing?
I mean, it looks good, I think.
Okay. Oh well. Okay. Again, we're here in the Nutmeg Tavern. We're live. This stream started in a strange way. We don't know what was going on with YouTube, and we scheduled it, but it didn't seem to work right. So if you're into the stream here, sort of midstream, we've really just gotten started. My guest here is Dave Taylor. We're talking about coffees, nutmeg coffee here that we're going to be tasting here in a little bit, as well as reenacting 18th century things, maybe looking for things in antique stores that have to do with reenacting in the 18th century, a lot of different topics like that. So if you got questions, whether it has to do with other videos that we've done in the past, so 18th century cooking, or coffee related questions, historical questions, whatever you've got, go ahead. What have you got, Ryan?
I've got a coffee roaster who uses a large electric bean roaster, but would like to do old school roasting. They're wondering about what's the best way to use the backyard grill. Other folks are just asking what is a good way to get into coffee roasting at home.
Well, you can get into coffee roasting at home, and you can use a Jiffy Pop coffee or a popcorn popper, or one of those kind of things, hot air popcorn popper. That was when the people first started kind of like that home roasting. They were converting Jiffy Pops. A lot of guys you can get online, you can buy a can, if you will, that fits your rotisserie on your grill. Now, one of the things you have to remember, everything that you do imparts flavor on that.
Right.
So if you're going to use a gas grill, that's probably going to impart the least amount of flavor, it's going to be the least effect upon your coffee. But if you're using charcoal, or if you're using wood, something like that, that can have some effect upon your coffee, because it may absorb
just like in
some
cooking,
of those. It will absorb some of that flavor. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. But if you want to test the waters, you can get just a big cast iron skillet. Main thing, keep it moving all the time. Watch the coffee videos. Watch the coffee videos.
There's even a video on our channel that where Dave roasts coffee right over the open fire. If you guys can find a link and toss it into the chat, that'd be wonderful. And that would help on that.
Yeah. Sometimes you can find them on old coffee roasters online. They're usually not really cheap.
Yeah.
But you can find them. commercial roasters are like horrendously expensive, and I wouldn't, unless you want to become a commercial roaster, I wouldn't waste that kind.
So what about these new like test roasters, the electric test roasters that just do a couple pounds at a time? Have you played with any of those?
For yourself, you're doing a pound or so at a time. Those are fine. Actually, the broker I buy from, he has a coffee roaster that you can get through him, and it's not very expensive. And nice looking roaster. What you can do is you can text or email Townsend's here, and I'll get you that information because I don't have it right now.
Right.
So
Yeah. I've played with one of those before. They're kind of cool, and you can mess with how you're going to roast it next time and not waste a lot of coffee in the trial process. So somebody is wondering about references of coffee being used in ale or in desserts in early America.
that is, you can use that in all kinds of products, in chocolates, in ales. I have a friend of mine who brews all the time, and I'll roast him sometimes special blends where I'll make him special coffees that he uses in his brewing. And actually, he won a state championship last year with one of my coffees in his stout. And it was a chocolate raspberry coffee stout that he made, and it was pretty good.
When it comes to looking for those kind of references in period things, I have not seen too many references of it being used as an ingredient in, you said, an ale. Generally, those, if they did that, they didn't write about that. They didn't necessarily reference that. It would have been sort of like a secret ingredient in the time period, and so you don't see it referenced in the texts.
And it might have been kind of an expensive ingredient for because they had so many other things they were using to flavor with at that time.
Yeah.
I want to do some donations while we still
great.
kind of waiting on people to fill in. Everybody's jumping in going, what? I didn't know you guys
exactly.
were
What happened?
Yeah, sorry about that, everyone. So we got a donation from Maxer Cool. Thank you so much.
Max.
Dave, how long can unroasted / green beans stay good? And then a nice donation from Kevin Bowen.
Thank you, Kevin.
Happy birthday, John.
Yeah.
Kevin.
Is it your birthday?
Well, it's my Facebook birthday.
Got it. Get some of Dave's great coffee with this. Just wondering if the amazing blue mugs like John has or the Savoring the Flavors t-shirts will be issued again. So yeah, let's do the
first one. The first one was about green beans and how long they
can stay.
All right, green beans in their green state, if they're kept in a fairly stable environment, you can keep them for years. And I have one coffee, a Monsoon Malabar. Before I get it, it's aged from 1 to 3 years before I ever receive it. It has a mellowing effect upon that. There's a coffee house in Florence. They do 6,000 shots of espresso a day. That's all they do is espresso shots. But they age all their coffee 1 year before they roast it. So you can imagine how much coffee they got to have sitting around if they're aging it for a year.
Right. They got a warehouse of coffee.
Yeah,
to be
they got
cooked.
a warehouse a lot of coffee. But once they reach that saturation point, they're taking it out of there every day to roast.
Right.
So, and 6,000 coffee shots, that's a lot of coffee.
What was that second question?
Oh, just wondering about merch being reissued.
Oh, yeah. Kyle or Ryan was going to say something.
Oh yeah, I would like to redo I'd like to do the
shirts?
savoring shirts again. We've talked about that a few times.
Right.
I think that was the first one that we did, maybe, or with
Right.
the nutmeg one. But yeah, we want to redo that. And then the coffee mugs come around a few times a year.
I don't have a batch in the works right now on mugs, but if you've got a special request for, what mugs you think would be most interesting. I mean, we've had the ones with the old logos or with the new Nutmeg Tavern kind of logo. If you want to pop into the chat there and talk about what you'd be most interested in, I'd love to hear that. Was that it, Aaron, for
That's
your...
it. Yep.
Good. Okay.
So we think about impressment as a cause of the War of 1812. But was it a common practice during the Revolutionary War? And is this exclusively from England? Or to England, excuse me.
So, impressment of sailors in the 18th and in the early 19th century.
It was fairly common,
Yeah.
especially amongst the British.
Right.
Americans were a little bit more diplomatic.
Well, let's talk about the idea of impressment first, and let's lay a foundation for this.
You want to jump in on impressment?
Sure. Well, impressment, what it was a sailor's life was not the most joyous life to begin with.
Nope.
Bad food, they knew that they were going to lose as much as a third of the crew in a cruise. So it was not a job that you sought as an enlisted person, if you will.
Especially in the military.
In the military. Yeah. And so the navies would impress people. They'd go around, get drunk, so on and so forth. And if you were doing time in jail, you could get out of jail to serve aboard a ship. Yeah. So not the greatest group of guys in the world, But that's how, in the military end of it. In the civilian end of it, it was much easier. And then, say, like in the Americas, where you're doing a lot of privateering, you usually didn't have any problems getting a crew because you are going to get a part of the prize of every ship that you captured. And that was a point of dissent amongst the Navy and such. The regular Navy was the fact that they didn't share in the prize money. So that's why you always had it was easy to get privateering crews. Yeah. Not so easy for regular sailing crews.
Yeah, I'm not positive about that. I'm pretty sure that there was still sharing in the prizes, even in the naval things.
Yeah, some of
British sides.
I don't really remember unequivocally.
But there were cuts out of that, and it wasn't as good. So, it was a lot harder to get sailors, and so they would just go into a port and they would round up anybody who looked like they were going to be useful, especially if they were already looked like they knew what they were doing as sailors, and they would possibly stop civilian ships and take sailors out of them. They would also just impress people, or it's like, oh, he's a tailor, not anymore, and they would drag him away and make him work on board ship. There were different people that you might have a certificate to make you not eligible for the press. Certain types of occupations would give you a get out of jail free card, basically.
Yeah.
But you definitely didn't see as much of that going on, or any of that really going on from the American side. All that was volunteer, as compared to the British stuff. And I don't know if other, like the French, were impressing sailors or not. I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, I haven't really. But I do know the British were pretty adamant about that. Yeah.
So that's and they had a very difficult time because they were at war so much of that 18th and early 19th century period that they were really burning through a lot of different people that were eligible to be that. So it was hard to find sailors.
Probably in the French side, and this is just a guess.
Oh boy!
But you have to think about the French have really good wine. Good cheeses, good breads. They're going like, sure, I'm going to join a French crew. British Navy, hardtack.
Yeah. Saltpeter,
peas.
Yeah.
Rum that was cut with water and stuff.
Yeah, so, and green fuzzy water. Yeah.
My choice would be French.
Yeah.
I'd go French Navy.
Okay, we've got some ground to cover, so I'm going to ask this question, and then we asked Dave to bring some show and tell items. So
we ought to get to this coffee before it turns into. Okay, no,
I mean, you can drink it, but we're not going to talk about it for a little while.
Got it.
Okay.
Feel free to drink as much as you want to. I don't want to stop you there. This question is wondering about city infrastructure, services back then, especially city lighting, street lamps, that sort of thing. That going on?
So if we're talking, it's probably a good bit difference between Great Britain and big cities versus small towns, and what was going on in, say, Great Britain versus North America in the 18th century. I had a really interesting. I was just doing research the last couple of days, and it had to do with the poor in North America in, say, from the 1770s all the way into 1800. And there was a great little chart there that had to do with it was a standard small town, and it had to do with the amount of their budget they were spending and what they were spending it on. And this town was spending 50 to 75% of their budget on poor relief. And most of the rest of it was on straight up administration and the people that were working for the town. So it really didn't leave much space for things like town services that we might expect. Where's the water going to come from? Some of these other things that we would consider municipal things, those were done sort of privately in these smaller towns, so that you didn't see as much of that. Are we going to have lighting in our streets? You definitely might see that in Great Britain with lamplighters and lamps around that, but in North America, I don't think there's nearly as much of that sort of thing.
Exactly. A lot of people had private wells,
right,
outhouses, so there wasn't that much. There was, but say like in London and England, there was more sewage. They had sewer systems.
Well,
and such,
sort of.
So,
I mean, if you call the gutter down the middle of the street a sewer.
I was just reading an article in National Geographic about how that their sewer systems were far better than we thought.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember the details in that particular.
I think we covered that one.
All right. Can we go on to some show and tell stuff? Is that okay?
Sure. So
it was your idea. Yeah, you should.
Right. So Dave runs the antique store. He's been digging around in antique stores for probably 35 years or more.
Since I was a kid, actually.
Specifically looking for things that have to do with 18th and 19th century and reenacting, or just where to find the goodies. And if you want to know where to look in an antique store to find the best stuff, you want to ask a guy that's been doing it for that long and runs a store. So tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I will tell you, antique dealers don't know nearly what they think they know. Everybody has their kind of specialty.
Sure.
And mine tends to be at our shop. We do a little more art, jewelry. I collected just numerous things over the years, naval memorabilia, 18th century cookware.
Mm-hmm.
18th century cookware, if you study, you'll find it here and there.
Yeah.
And here in the Midwest, especially 18th century cookware, if you find it, it's going to be cheap because they're going to price it just like any other cast iron cookware.
Yeah, right.
So and I have picked up some really good deals on 18th century cookware because the people know that. So I did bring a couple of things that I thought were kind of interesting.
Yeah. What you got?
Now, this is a Suba. This is off a Japanese samurai sword. And I brought this. This is a World War II. Nothing special about this one here. But I brought this one here. I got this in an antique store. It was somebody had taken a samurai sword and cut it down to make it into a hunting knife, which was a foolish move because samurai swords are very much sought after, and they can bring some very good money. And this was I had a young guy come in, and he brought a samurai sword into me, and he wanted me to identify it. And I had loaned my sword book out, so I'd sent this off to. I do shows all over, so I do shows in Miami Beach and New York and so on and so forth. So I get to meet people from all over who specialize in things,
Right.
and we really don't have time to go into all the details of who does what and so on and so forth. But anyhow, so I sent this sword off, and it came back 15th century samurai sword with 18th century furniture.
Wow.
So the Suba, this is the furniture, all the metal workings on
Right.
it. And then the blade itself is the actual. So here's a sword that was made before Columbus discovered America. So when you think about how old that was. And then the furniture on it was probably made when George Washington, before and during the time of the American Revolution. So here's this old sword. And anyhow, and it ended up, the guy decided to sell it to the gentleman who did the identifying that sword. And now I wished I'd have bought it because it would have been just really a nice rare sword.
Yeah.
I get lots of really unusual things. I tend to have a reputation here in this town. Now, Pearson is filled with antique stores.
Yeah.
There's up and down the street. So if you want to spend a day antiquing, and in this area, you could spend 2 or 3 days in this area in a 30, 40-mile driving range. Just antiquing. So, but I would start in Pearson because we'll tell you where to go.
Yeah.
But so people bring me unusual stuff. They bring me art because you just never know what's going to walk through the door. And So these right here, these are a pair of cups, horn cups, and the guy, he was going to have somebody do a sale, like a garage sale and sell off his mom's stuff. And he brought these to me, and he asked me what I thought about these, because they were going to sell them for $7 each. Mm-hmm. These are British toasting cups. And in here, and you can't see, but right in here, these are all the marks on here. And you can read the marks, especially British were very good about that. You can tell the year it was made, who made it, where it was made. So these were in Birmingham. These were made in Birmingham, England in 1834. So, and they're definitely worth more than $7 each. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, so that's these right here.
Yeah, beautiful pieces. Just keep this one.
And this right here, the knife looking thing here, these are and I've had several people tell me what these are, and in one shop this was like a bread knife. This was in kitchen stuff. So that's one of the things when you're looking
bread.
through, but it has a saw blade on one side and a cutting edge. So, it looked to me like a pruning saw when I first saw it. It was a pruning saw because you chop off the small limbs, then you cut the big limbs. Mm-hmm. And then I had another guy who had one like this, and he told me what it really was for opening coconuts. That's what it was for.
Of course.
Is to open coconuts with. So we know a bread knife to open coconuts, but what this really is, and Civil War people will recognize it, this is a amputation saw. Mm-hmm. And big handle here, so when you get blood and stuff all over it, you still get a good grip. But that is because they're not using anesthesia a lot. Whack through the flesh, flip it over real quick, saw through the bone, put the skin back over, and whammo! You want to do this in just seconds. So that's what this is for.
Keep that over there, yeah.
And I've got a couple of these in the shop, just because it's. And this is almost like I don't really care if I sell it or not because it's such an interesting story.
Yeah.
And I've had all kinds of things that have came through the shop there that so it always makes it's a very interesting job because people bring in stuff all the time. Mm-hmm. I had an Usik at Eskimo War Club, 6-foot Kachina doll, and I end up selling that to a guy from New Mexico and cigar store Indians, and then the normal antique stuff, Yeah. But then there's the unusual things that and people bring stuff in. I actually do. I'll call it antique identification for the local libraries and things as a fundraiser. And people will bring stuff in. And I remember a guy called me up. He was going to bring some stuff in, and he wanted to know if I knew anything about this guy named Sterling. He got this coffee set, and Sterling was on the bottom. And if I knew anything about that manufacturer, I said, "Oh yeah, I did. You bring it in." Anyhow, he bought the whole set in a garage sale for $40. And anyhow, so I enlightened him as to what it really was, and so.
Let's break for a second.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Do you have any questions? And if not, I've got a couple things I'll show Dave.
Yeah. Let's move on to that, and then let's get to tasting some coffee.
Okay. So I was up in Michigan, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and found this guy. Which, you never know when you're digging around. You'll look at there's stupid little pieces of pottery laying all over a store.
See, and this is where, because I've always been interested in antiques, but in like 1975, I met your dad, and I would start doing work with him, and going to the shows, and so here for 45 years or better, I have been able to go to these shows and see all the different people who make all the different things that we sell. So anything that you see in the Townsend's catalog or the shop, there's an original. Yep. And that's why I started collecting 18th century cookware, because people would say like, well, is that real? So on and so forth. And I said, well, I have the original at home.
Yeah.
And so this one here, I mean, and it is very difficult to identify sometimes. This one here, there is a crack. So, and the reason I brought up 1975, because this could conceivably already be 40 or 50 years old.
If it was a reproduction, yeah.
As a reproduction. And I've had people bring in reproductions, and I'm going like, well, I know who made that. You know, so it's not really 200 years old, because I met the guy. This one here, part of it says when I look at the bottom, so it's like there's lots of things that when you look at this, you look at this, and you know there's guys that make these. But I look at the bottom, and there's this kind of grayishness in here that is from use on a table a lot. My first inclination just to look at it, and I would say it's a reproduction, but when I look at the bottom, very well could be real. So this is where you take this to somebody who specializes in pottery. Yeah. And he'd take one look at it. I had a print one time, a Japanese print, and I spent a year doing research on that. And I took it to Thomas French, and you can look him up. This guy knows everything about prints. And I showed it to Thomas, and he's going like, yeah, and he's telling me who the guy's mother was. He told me who he was, when they were active. You know, he was just like spitting out information, and he just looked at it. You know, so that's why each dealer, they know their special little area.
Yeah. So I looked at this one immediately, and I'm thinking, when I see a piece like this, I'm thinking it's a reproduction. Yeah. But I don't think this one actually is.
I think that's an original.
Yeah. If you feel about how this was made, normally today you would make a piece like this, you would actually cast it. And these, in the time period, all these little things that stick out, they're sprigged on. They would actually make these little pieces of clay. This little medallion on the front here would be put into its own little mold, and then they would turn up the pot here, and then they would sort of stick these on. You can tell from the inside that this was a turned piece, and that these were sprigged on. And nobody in the modern setting wants to do that kind of work, so they would normally make this in a new kind of way. And you can see, you can see the finger work, how they actually made the little spout on this guy. I did some more research on it, and it's probably early 19th century. They made these similar all the way up into the 1850s. But cool piece, and I think it was like a $12 piece.
Yeah,
you find
that's a steal,
right? So they don't know what they have.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's one thing really.
Yeah.
Where you were able to identify this because you've been a potter.
Right.
You've been throwing pots for years, so you know how it's constructed.
And if you don't recognize a piece and you don't have any knowledge about it, then you're probably going to get taken. Because
it depends on how much.
Right,
if it's really cheap, you go.
How about
for
those
it.
guys? What do you think about that?
Oh yeah, these are nice, and I'm going to say 1800s.
Yeah.
1800s to 1850. One of the clues is always the fact that if there's no legs on it, that means when they're starting to put it on a stove. So it's going to be after a stove was made. Anything with legs, in general, going to be earlier piece, not unequivocally, but in general. And these are nice pots here, and I'm not going to ask you what you paid, but a lot less than the reproduction. That is one of the things. A lot of times you can buy originals.
That's
a lot less than the reproductions.
Sure. Very true that you may go to an antique store and say, boy, that seems a little pricey. When the reality is if you wanted to buy a reproduction of that same thing, it would cost you 4 or 5 times that.
Yeah. And I didn't bring it. I had a copper pot that I know is 18th century. And I picked it up for almost nothing. So and relatively, so I put $450 on it.
Yeah.
And everybody's going like, 450. And I go like, well, go to the coppersmith and tell him you want a reproduction of this, and I know the one that I have to have somebody make it. If you get it for less than $700-800 for that particular piece, you would be lucky.
Yeah.
All right.
So is it time to try?
Let's taste some coffee. Okay. Let's talk about this coffee.
It's been aging. Tell us about the coffee again, Dave.
Okay. Well, this is a combination of Central American and African coffees. I picked the Central American coffee because there are a lot of sweet notes into it. And the other thing I was thinking about, this has to go with nutmeg. Nutmeg is going to be part of that.
Nutmeg Tavern coffee, yeah.
Yeah. So you wouldn't scrape nutmeg into, when they make mulled wine, they use a sweeter wine. You wouldn't take a Burgundy, a dry red wine, and put nutmeg in it. So and coffees are like wines. So the base of this is a sweet coffee.
Okay.
Complement the nutmeg, but you also want a little spiciness. And the coffee that I used has subtle notes of cinnamon and nutmeg in it to begin with. So there is some interest going on. This is a very, a reasonably complex coffee. And when you take a taste of this, you're going to feel that sweetness on your tongue. One of the things that I do when I did coffee tastings, I would go ahead and do a series of coffee tastings. What one to do to help people was I would do one coffee that was like the dry red wine, like a Kenyan, and then the other side of it would be like a Mexican, which is a very sweet coffee. So if you taste the Kenyan first, it's almost like you dump sugar in the Mexican coffee,
right?
Relatively speaking. So that's one of the things. And so
let's see if Ryan did an okay job making this.
My coffee is always the best coffee.
Excellent. Yeah, he did okay. He did okay. Yeah. I've been wanting to drink this, and actually this is what I had this morning. Now that I've done this blend, I've been drinking it for the past couple of days here just to see. And one of the things, we cupped it the other day, Wednesday, and that was right after I roasted it, so it was still young. Coffee for the first 2 to 3 days is attaining flavor. So as you taste this, there's more body in this coffee today. There is more roundness of flavor. So,
all right, I'm going to interrupt real quick because people are asking. We've got this available for merch. Can you talk about that real quick, John? What that looks like?
So we've been working with Dave on this particular product for 45 days or so, and Dave took a lot of time trying to figure out what this right kind of mix was and everything, and we decided what we would do was sell it along with a whole nutmeg and a little nutmeg grater. So you can purchase this Nutmeg Tavern coffee that's roasted and ready to go. You'll have to grind it up. And you'll get, along with that package, a little grater and a whole little nutmeg, because it's really meant to be kind of these two things go together. These things are available on our website, and there'll be a link. There's a link down in the description section.
Yeah, Aaron just dropped it in the chat, too.
Yeah,
okay.
And
is there anything else I need to cover on it?
No, I don't think so. We can let Dave talk a little bit more about it, but what do you have there with it?
What do I have there?
Yeah, you baked something.
Yeah. So to go with this coffee, because coffee you just can't have coffee, and I'm going to adulterate mine here in a second with the nutmeg. That's not adulteration. It's supposed to have nutmeg in it, and all those other good things. If you look at the second season, I believe, of the cooking thing, we've got a little simple biscuit recipe, and I went ahead and made those, and another biscuit that's a little different. What do you think about that one?
Now,
this one's from John Knott's dictionary. It's probably a 1720s recipe.
Mm-hmm. Now, when I think of biscuits or English cookies, in a shortbread style, I tend to personally like my cookies a little crunchier.
Yep.
And I would say these probably are very, very similar. Now, I like this one here. John brushed egg whites on this.
The recipe called for
and
that.
that's why in the two of these, you can see the difference here. And you can tell this is an early batch of cookies. The texture of it and how that it comes out.
So, did you recommend using brown sugar as the sweetener on this? Or was that Ryan just going crazy?
Those are all personal tastes.
Really? We'll try it with that. I've never used brown sugar as a sweetener.
See, I personally would add maybe a little nutmeg and a little cream.
Oh yeah.
And I would drink it that way. It depends upon, for me, sometimes the time of the day and what I'm going to have with it.
Yeah.
I like a nice Scottish shortbread cookie. And I have a really early Scottish shortbread recipe also.
So somebody's in here asking what the preferred method of brewing for the nutmeg coffee would be.
Yeah, what do you think, Dave? What's your suggestion for? He's got to try to get this biscuit down.
Brewing is almost a preference for people. Each person has their method of brewing that they like. Of course, right now, currently, the hot new preferred method is a pour over.
The brand new
the
one?
brand new method is a pour over. Now, I will tell you, in that brand new pour over method, I have a copy of a 1750s earthenware coffee pot, and the only thing that it's actually missing is the electricity, because you can put a Mr. Coffee filter in there, you put the coffee in there, and you pour the hot water on top, and bingo, you have pour over coffee from 1750. I really like a Chemex myself, and I do French presses, because you can do, if you do 3 different brewing methods in your coffee, and each method is going to be a little bit different in the flavor profile that you're going to achieve. One of the things I do, if I'm making smaller batches, I use my French press in general, or if I'm camping or something like that, a lot of times I use French press. And part of that is, but the French press will impart other flavors in there, and partially because you're going to get, and I tend to grind my coffee finer than most people do in a French press, because the water is coming over the granules of coffee and it's extracting the emulsions out of the coffee, and so I grind a little finer because I want to get more flavor out of there. But that, hence, when you get down to the bottom, there's this layer in the bottom of your cup.
It's called sludge.
It's the sludge, yes. So
that yummy sludge.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for commenting that you're buying the coffee. That's really
wonderful.
exciting.
Is there another mug over there?
Of coffee? No. You'll have to find one over there.
Here's a tin cup there.
Either one is fine.
Is that a japanned cup?
Yes, that's a japanned tin.
So, how much nutmeg did you guys grate into this?
We were talking to this manufacturer a couple months ago.
Yeah, because I saw that sitting there and I thought, that's a japanned cup.
Hey, guys.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, look, remember the live stream here?
Oh yeah. Sorry.
So, how much nutmeg did you grate on top?
I just did a touch. I mean, what's funny is you'll look in the 18th century recipes, and they use a ton of nutmeg. I mean, it's like grinding up 3/4 of a whole nutmeg into X, Y, Z, and
those are always going to be personal preferences.
Yeah, exactly. Most people today aren't going to toss that much nutmeg into it.
I made a drink not too long ago that had too much. Apparently, I thought it was great.
Well, I was having to strain the nutmeg out with my teeth.
All right, let's blast through some questions real quick.
Okay, go for it.
Did Rev's War Soldiers have an allowance of coffee?
I doubt it.
Okay.
I have read that they had allowances of everything, but I haven't heard that they had an allowance of coffee as such. Doesn't mean that they didn't get it. But I know that by the Civil War, they did get an allowance of coffee, but they received it green, to my knowledge, and it wasn't until Arbuckles came along that started roasting it for the general public. But prior to that, when you went into a grocery store, you didn't buy green roasted coffee. And here's one of the things that because by then they're sealing that coffee, and when you roast coffee, and that's one of the things, like when you order coffee from Townsend & Sons, sometimes you don't get that coffee going out that day because I didn't have it in stock, or I wanted to roast it. So most of the coffee, when it leaves the store, I've literally roasted the coffee, brought it over to Dan in the shipping department, and it's on the road, and it was only roasted 3 hours ago. Mm-hmm. I'll get it cool enough to handle.
And then it ages on the truck. And by the time it's in their hands, it's ready to go.
Perfect.
Coffee is in the first 24 to 72 hours. It's letting off CO2. That's that little button that's on the front of the bag. That's called a degassing valve. That's letting the gas off. Coffee gives off 10 times its own volume in gas. What you have to remember, though, is
global warming there with coffee beans.
Yeah, the CO2 that's coming out of that coffee. There we go. That's the one-way valve. That means flavor can go out. So you have roughly 6 weeks. That is your really best flavor
and then
of coffee.
Throw it out and get more.
Yeah. Well, that's what my first coffee broker told me. So hence we here at Townsend's, and I guess I use the we because I'm sitting here. We're always drinking coffee that's just a few days old or a few hours old.
We are doing the short answer form of question and answer right now.
Oh, is that what
There was a wonderful answer, Dave, but
you're asking the wrong guy for
Some
that.
people are asking about mugs in the chat. We do short run mugs every once in a while. We do it when we feel like doing it because we think that you'll enjoy it, and they sell out pretty much in 48 hours. So if you're looking for past colors like blue or peacock or steel or whatever, we don't have them anymore. We only have one left, and it is in the Nutmeg Tavern. So
I'll put a new batch in though.
Yeah,
when we figure
we'll order
out
some more mugs up.
Yeah.
What would somebody asked? Here's a good question for Dave. A quick answer, Dave. Would you describe the difference? How would you describe the differences between your Ranger Roast and your Pirates Blend?
Oh.
Okay.
There should be an easy answer.
Yeah, that's right. Relatively, the easiest answer is the Pirates Blend is much darker in the overall roast profile. The Ranger Roast, there's 3 coffees in the Ranger Roast that form that blend.
Short answer. Remember?
Short answer. While in the Pirates Blend, there is essentially about 6 or 7 coffees in there without just
That's
off
a
the top of
blend.
my yeah. And it's a blend of lights and darks.
Yes.
In the dark versus light thing, this new Nutmeg Tavern coffee is
A light roast.
It
It is a little darker than cinnamon, but it's not like a medium dark.
super
So-
yummy.
And all of the coffee is come whole bean. Yes,
Yes. Whole
bean,
that's a
yes.
question.
Right.
Everything on our website. Does anybody know about the forefathers growing coffee on any of their plantations or places, lands?
I'm going to say no because nobody has been able to grow coffee in the continental United States. It's just too cold. It will kill the trees. That's why you can get a coffee, say, as far north as Cuba and where you never are going to see snow. They grow it in Hawaii. Because
And they were too busy growing tobacco.
There may have been instances where they grew it in a greenhouse as an exotic.
Well, the King of France did that.
Right, and even George Washington had heated greenhouses, so he may have had something like a coffee plant, but commercially, no.
No.
So,
One real quick comment when you're talking about the coffee when it's roasted. So here you have the 6-week window on coffee when it's roasted of the best flavor. When you grind coffee, that 6 weeks drops to 12 hours. You've lost that much flavor in 12 hours. That's why it's always you should get a grinder. I've never had a single customer that said I shouldn't have bought a grinder. It was the best thing they ever did. Mm-hmm. And no matter what your brewing method is, I would say the most important thing is buy a good grinder.
Yeah, and then you can use it to grind up your peppercorns and all other sorts of things in your kitchen.
Yeah, it'll impart interesting flavors on your coffee then.
So there's this question about Jefferson experimenting with coffee and Monticello, specifically Jefferson. Anybody heard anything? I don't know. I got
to do some research.
Yeah, that's going to be a hard one to pin down for sure. How about a favorite 1800s cookbook? Anybody got a favorite 1800s?
1800s. Well, I usually stick early. I mean, by the time you get to 1830s, I'm not paying attention to the cookbooks anymore. The Mary Randolph, Virginia Housewife from 1824 is basically about the end of the 19th century or 1800s cookbooks. But that's definitely an interesting cookbook.
Okay. How popular was cider in the 18th century, and have you ever tried to brew your own?
It's massively popular. It is one of the most popular things in North America. I mean, it was still popular in Great Britain, but very, very popular with the amount of apples and the simplicity of making it. There are many recipes for it in the 18th century cookbooks, and at different places in North America, it was more popular than beer. So it's going to be one of the major drinks that people are going to have. And you can imagine if you've ever had real apple cider that's unpasteurized and you've let it set for any length of time, it kind of does its own thing. It kind of makes its own cider. So
I would say it's probably the simplest drink you can get. You take apples, crush them, and there you are.
Yeah.
And that's what you can do with all your excess apples. Then it turns into vinegar. So there's lots of things that you can do with it. You could go ahead and distill it into brandy.
Yeah.
So...
All right, we're short on time here. We got some donations, and I've got two quick questions. One is, are we going to have a female guest in the tavern? I am currently working on that right now. So, yes, we will. I'm working on it. Somebody asked, John, some folks are always wanting Native American cooking. How about Minnesota wild rice? You ever thought about Minnesota wild rice?
Yes.
Okay.
You can have Eric Bostine come on here. That would be.
We're having a hard time, I guess, following through with plans that we make with folks with Native American cooking, just because we don't live in close proximity, and we're both sets of folks are very busy, but we're working on that. We'd love to do that.
And to find people who really, really know, because that's one of the things, Townsend's known for, their level of authenticity. So you have lots of people with lots of opinions. Here's somebody that has their great-great-great-great-grandmother was Cherokee, and now they're to hear them tell it they're full-blooded Indian, and they really don't know anything.
Right. We would do it a disservice if we tried to do it without somebody to help us along. So Aaron's got a couple donations, and then we
go ahead, Aaron.
Goodbye.
Yeah. Donation from Bo, B-E-A-U.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bo.
And then a donation from Keltoid5.
Ah, there's Keltoid5.
Oops, my question from last week, I was reading wrong. It was not savories, it was savoys.
Yeah.
It was a cabbage,
Savoys.
a stuffed cabbage. My coffee is on the way. Thanks a lot.
Great. Super.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Actually, okay, yeah, that's it. Sorry, I thought I missed one. That's it.
Good.
I do have one last thing here to show in the show and tell if we have time.
Sure. Yeah, we have time. Go ahead.
All right. This was because I get interesting things come in. And this actually, I went to an estate sale and bought this with a bunch of other stuff. But this is a bottle of original 1811 Napoleon champagne brandy. Now you can see it's somewhat evaporated off.
I don't think it's any good anymore.
It actually
You throw it out.
Actually, they sealed it. They stored it improperly, so the cork has dried. I tried to turn it on its side to see if the cork would swell back up, and it doesn't. But some of the brandy did come out, and it tastes and it's actually quite tasty, which I'm really surprised.
We'll crack it open.
Yeah, let's crack. Come on, pour me a
No, I don't think we're going to do that. But you can see on here, Cognac Napoleon, Grand Fine, Champagne Reserve, 1811. So it's just like, this is a cool thing.
That's
Great
crazy.
bottle with the Napoleon, the N on there. So anyhow, I have no idea of its value. So perhaps somebody out there
Napoleon made it himself, probably.
Yeah, probably. Well, it's 1811. He was around.
There
He
you
was
go.
probably like, this was before he started the wars.
Yeah, he went. He was
something to do.
Yeah.
Probably sitting there on
winemaker, I know he
Alba.
was.
So I'd say,
Questions?
Or do we...
Or you want me to close this up? It's up to
do
you.
the coffee one more time?
Yeah, coffee one more time. Let's talk about the coffee.
We,
How it comes and how it comes when it's shipped to them, and how we came about it.
So we had Dave work on coming up with a special coffee blend just to go with nutmeg to obviously work here in the Nutmeg Tavern. This stuff this coffee is roasted up fresh. Dave roasts it, and then we'll package it up with a small nutmeg grater and a whole nutmeg that'll go along with that. So it's one package nutmeg grater and a pound of coffee. These are roasted beans. You'll need to grind them. This is available on our website. It's available right now, and there's a link down in the description section. So if you're interested in Nutmeg Tavern coffee, you can go and check that out. You have anything else you want to say about it specifically?
no, other than they're going to get fresh coffee,
Yeah.
and it's specifically for Townsend's. Now, I may have this coffee when I go to Kalamazoo. So this coffee will be available at some of the shows that I go to
Right.
at Kalamazoo, Mississinawa 1812, Feast of the Hunter's Moon. So it will be. So you'll be able to buy the Townsend's Nutmeg Tavern coffee at those shows.
Yeah. What you got there, Dave?
This is an interesting thing. One of the things that you can find that I think is really inexpensive at antique stores are waffle makers, because as far as I know, nobody is reproducing waffle makers. You can find all kinds of other reproductions, but waffle makers is not one of them. You can get toasters. So if you want something interesting for camp, you can still find original waffle makers of the 18th century.
and the wafer irons, too, that make the flat wafers.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is one thing. I've got several of these in the store, but awesome. I think this is kind of, so if you wanted something interesting in the camp in the morning, you can go ahead and make some waffles, and then with some real apple butter or maple syrup that you buy from the guy down there, and your cup of nutmeg coffee, and some bacon. What a breakfast! What a breakfast right there.
Yeah. How we doing out there, guys?
It's time to say goodbye.
Okay. Before we say goodbye, I want to have special thanks to some brand new folks that are supporting us on Patreon. Mel, Into Inu, something like that. Lauren Faleski, Ken Pedinen, and Stefan Elkin. Thank you, all you folks that support us on Patreon. We also had folks that were supporting us on Super Chat today. Thank you for supporting us in that way, that direct support that says, here, we want to help you make more videos. Thank you so much for that sort of vote of support. Yes, and vote of confidence. So, thank you to special guys out there in the support guys out there. Questions with Ryan and Aaron on the console. Special thanks to Dave for bringing us his wonderful coffee and answering wonderful questions. And a special thanks to all you guys out there who support us by watching videos, supporting us by buying merch or whatever it is. Thank you so much, and thanks for watching today.